Olusegun have kind of set the tone in terms of what's driving a lot of people, from an individual level to think about leaving their own countries and migrating into other areas. And what comes through is the fact that the principal driver is the failure of institutions and also economic factors. So I would like to look at this from two perspectives. So one is the national reason that enables migration. So why do countries like the US, like Canada, like Australia, like the UK or other European countries, even Asian countries, encourage migrants to migrate into their spaces? And then talk a bit about the individual factors as well. So what are the other things individuals think about when they are considering migration? So I think first and foremost, at a national level, the reason is twofold. One is economic. I live in Canada, and I'll use Canada as an example. So if you've been following the news, in 2019, Canada did make an announcement that they intend to bring in about 1 million migrants over the next 3 years. So between 2019 and 2021, Canada wants to bring in 1 million people from other countries in the world. The question is why? Canada is the largest country, second largest actually, by landmass, so there's lots of space. But when you look at that size of a country and the population, Canada is about 36.5 million people. And what we have realized is if you look at the OECD countries, Canada is one of the fastest growing among those countries economically. And the reason that underpins that is because Canada has made itself an attractive space for immigrants to come and work and develop. So certainly, Canada benefits hugely from having people from other countries come here. The story is not different in the US. So if you think about Australia is also a very attractive country to immigrants. They make it easy for people to come, and not just anybody. They are looking for highly skilled professionals. And by attracting these folks, into these countries, they are depriving home countries of the benefits these individuals, may have afforded to their own respective countries. The other factor is an interesting point, which is around the demography of these countries. A lot of the developed world have a population that is aging. And by that, I mean you have a large proportion of people who are closer to retirement. So that energy, that power, that labor force, to drive economic activity is declining. So on average, if you look at countries like the US, if you look at Australia, if you look at Japan, we're talking about the median age being at about 40 years, plus or minus 40 years. In a country like Nigeria with roughly 200 million people, our median age is 18.1 years. And that tells you a lot. So close to 60% of Nigeria's population is youth. That is a lot of power. That is a lot of productive energy that other countries want to tap into. However, they don't want just anybody. They want to cherry pick, who they bring into their own land. At the individual level, it's about a number of factors. Skill mobility. So I'll use India as an example. India has done a fantastic job of creating an environment that churns out people who are highly skilled in technology. But despite having 1.2 billion people, they don't have enough, in terms of companies and organizations to absorb all of that. So India has positioned itself as a country that produces, talent that countries like the US, like Australia, like Canada, the UK tap into. So if you were to look at Silicon Valley, in Western US, and look at the cadre of professionals you have there, a significant proportion of them tend to be immigrants. So at an individual level, skills mobility becomes really, really important. Can I leave the shores of my own country, go elsewhere, learn, develop, and become more internationally competitive? If the Nigerian community, the Nigerian environment is not affording me that, it creates incentive for me to want to, I believe it was you, Dr. Olusegun, when you said, to vote with my feet. The other factor is globalization. The world is becoming, it's more or less a global village. So right now, we're all in different locations. We're all having a conversation as if we're in one room. And, with improvement in travel, say for the disruptions we're experiencing now with COVID-19, moving from one location to the other, has become so easy. I live in Toronto. The US is barely an hour away, if I get to my car and drive. It just shows, how easy it is for people to actually move and, work in different locations. With remote working today, I don't have to be in this country to do my work because I work from home, and I've done that over the last 2.5 months. I very well could be in Lagos and be doing the same work, fully productively. So globalization then means, because some countries have a comparative advantage, and countries have also learned that you can't specialize in everything. You can't develop everything. So lots of Nigerian academics, move to other countries of the world to, not just learn and share experience, but to also develop those other countries. So that's one other important factor I think is worth talking about. Finally, there is what I will describe, broadly as social migration. People move for family reasons. So people who have moved years ago have got family here, who have told them the story of, that fantastic lifestyle they experience. It's about quality of life. It's about healthcare. It's about the things, good roads. It's about infrastructure, the things you probably miss back home. And people, get attracted to that and look for opportunities to either join their families, to be in a perceived better place, depending on how you look at it, and to experience what I call, potentially a better quality of life. And there are a number of pathways for people to migrate. And I think it's worth talking about that, really quickly. So education is one. Academics, like Professor Oyeni, for academic reasons, is moved internationally. Skilled workers, across different sectors. I'm a banker. I'm a strategist. I moved to this country. I used to work as a management consultant, where I moved to Canada and I work with a bank here. So nobody looks at me and says, you don't have the skills and experience you need to do the job. So long as you're skilled, whatever sector you are in, there's always that opportunity to move overseas. Healthcare is probably the most popular one. Doctors, so if you go into a typical hospital in the UK, you have lots and lots of Nigerian doctors and nurses. Same in the US. Engineering, people in professional services, accountants, auditors. Those in technology, I think there are lots of people who work at Twitter, Facebook, Google today, who are Nigerians, South Africans, Indians, people from all over the world. And beyond skilled labor, we also need to talk about unskilled labor because there's also migration among the unskilled. Farm workers are people that, go to other countries to actually work. And we don't tend to pay a lot of attention to those kind of people because, but you think about it, in the US, during planting season, you have lots of people coming from, Central America, Latin America, and even other countries to come and work in the US. It's a seasonal activity, which is why you sometimes hear people joke, about Mexicans coming to actually till the soil in the US. It is a reality. It's the same thing in Canada and other countries as well. You have plumbers, you have even housekeepers, nannies. So it's common knowledge that, in a lot of homes in the US, nannies come from the Philippines to come and actually, do that kind of work. And then you've got investors as well. And beyond all of these, which I categorize as, regular migrants, they're the what I call the irregular ones, which are those I think we talked about who come in, either come into the country illegally or who arrive legally, like Professor Bukola talked about, on a visitor visa or your H1, H2 visa, and then overstay their visa, thereby becoming illegal. And then the third are asylum seekers, who try to come under the guise of, whatever challenge they may be facing, but whose, asylum applications get rejected and then refuse to leave the country. And, it's important because this is a growing number. And I recall as of last year, thinking about the Canadian situation, Nigeria as a country had more pending, refugee protection claims in Canada than any other country globally. The next country on that list was India, but the number of people from Nigeria, was double that of India. So, and this kind of situations lead to countries pushing back, like we've had the US try to, clamp down on visas for Nigerians. So I think as we think about migration, legality is very important. And we've also got to recognize that there certainly are lots of opportunities, but there are also pitfalls. And I hope as we further this conversation, we will talk about some of those. So ongoing legality is one. The fact that migration offers you no guarantees is another thing to think about. It can't be rosy and it can't be not rosy. You've got to think about that. You've got to deal with change. You've got to deal with change. So cultural change, language change. A lot of folks I talk to tell me, oh, I speak English. Yes, there is Nigerian English and there is British English and American English and Canadian English. And these are all nuances that come into play when you move into a different market. You need to learn how to navigate that. There's culture. There's a workplace culture. How do you fit in? Are you employable? Can you be an entrepreneur in that environment? Can you actually play in that space? You know, local understanding, super important. And we also must not forget that racism is still a thing. So even Black people who live in the US, in Canada, other countries of the world, you know, have to deal with that challenge of both conscious and unconscious bias. It is a real thing.
Okay.
And as an immigrant, this is something you would have to also deal with.